Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, Chris here. So in today's video I thought I'd break down my production for the song Flying V by the artist JC.B, featuring the one and only Fendi Dawn Rush.
It's on me, inside myself like some old Russian dogs. It's on me, rush open doors, no more playing for chips, I'm more palm free.
Let's get into it.
Built different, too cold, the modular two-tone.
So I've got the Ableton project here. This is the production. Let's break it down piece by piece. First of all, if you haven't listened to the song, I would recommend you go listen to it. I've linked it in the bio so you can hear the full thing. Obviously, you've got a little preview at the start of this video, but this is the production. There's nothing massive. You could basically fit everything into this one screen here. I've got the music here and the vocals down here. Again, nothing too crazy. Let's break down the instrumental first. So this is what we've got. When I was speaking to JC.B when we were working on this song, his main concept was obviously we were working with a sample that I found. I think it was a splice sample or something, but he really wanted that like 808 drum sound. So something along the lines of this. So that's basically the drum sound we've gone for. You know, looking at it, it's not too much programming. Kick, snare, clap, hats. Let's just play through it individually real quick. Little tambo underneath that. Really dirty one. And then that kind of steps up when the second verse of Rush comes in. We've got these kind of like drum breaks underneath everything. As well as this percussion. Just some really wild percussion that is a side chain to the kick, just to add a bit more energy to the drum sound. Got a fat bass underneath that when this section comes in. So together they sound like this. That got a nice little sweep to bring all of that in. There you go. And then obviously we're working with our sample. So if I just play the raw sample, this is what we've got. You can see I'm doing some automation on this EQ. So once I've turned on the plugins, this EQ and the cassette, we get this. And then it opens up to a slightly more fuller version of the sample. Octave down. So that with the drums you get. And this wild sample underneath. It's like a flute sample or something. Let's see if I turn off the saturation. Like a reversed flute, but it just transitions into the next section quite nicely. So that plus the drums you get. Here I've pulled out the bass slightly in this section, so it's just a bit narrower to the previous section. And then moving on to the synthesis after this, we've got a couple layers. So in that first part of the verse, we have this lead very subtly tucked away in there. So that plus the sample. And then we have the wildest thing I've ever put in a production before, which is this monk singing sample. wild. That's just like an Omnisphere patch I had found, but that plus the sample. So there's that. That's quite a random thing in there. And then we get towards the end of JC.B's verse. There's a couple extra things going on. So we've got this brass sound on both sides, two different brass sounds, or same brass sound but octave apart. And then we have this, I think it's a Serum synth patch. So together you get that, plus the monks, and that another lead sound that sounds like this. So with all the rest of the production you get this. But then otherwise, that's pretty much the production. There's obviously the arrangement going on, tambourine comes in, but otherwise it's all the same elements, just kind of used accordingly to help spread out the verse. I believe we had actually taken this section and just moved it closer so that it comes in a bit sooner into Rush's verse to keep that energy up, but otherwise it's the same. So with that in mind, let's bounce over to the mix. All right, so we're back in Pro Tools. Here we go. You can see we've got all the same stuff laid out here. We've got the samples, the drums, bass, all the synths, brass, the vocals. Let's dive in. Now, obviously, because there was a bit of work done in the production phase, there's less going on in the mixing phase. I do like to do some slight tweaking. I find a lot of my sound comes from using auxiliary buses in this case because there will be some processing going on. So usually I find it's a lot of that as well as effect sends, you know, and then maybe some tweaks here and there. Usually the vocals is kind of what has the most processing because I end up taking it off the processing I do in the production just so I get like a free basis to work on. And yeah, let's dive in. So starting with the drums, like I said, a lot of the sound comes from my bus processing or just the group processing. As you can see here, we've got, I actually added another kick, I assume a kick sample when I was working on this and I bounced it out. So I've got this. So that's the kick sound. And I've got this kick, which is a very punchy kind of impacty kick. And then this is the lower 808 style kick. Together you get that, which is very nice. You can hear that noise on the snare being sidechained. But yeah, so we've got a bit of compression going on. Some decapitator to saturate it. Then some EQ, just very subtly brightening a bit of the mids, pulling out a bit of that annoying 5K. Got some of that Lil Lab's Voice of God, always adds a nice bit of low end to that, anything that needs it really. So I'm just punching in quite a bit of low end, a little bit of top on that 808 kick. A little bit of EQ, just shaping it, creating a bit of space for the bass there. And we've also got up here, Pro Tools has a heat, which is basically like saturation, kind of like a tape saturation thing that you can apply to the whole song on a per track basis. And then here you have this heat section where you can add drive and then pick tone, which is kind of like if you want the distortion to be more on the brighter side or the darker side. But I find it really convenient mainly for drums. So if I bypass the heat, you can hear very subtle, but saturating it, making it a bit brighter. It's quite nice. In this case, I am only using it on those drums and JC.B's backing vocals in this case. But yeah, let's continue going through the drum. So obviously we've got the claps. Hats. Got a little bit of EQ going on and compression on those claps. those rolling drums, should I say, not the rim. But we've added this Synths amp, which I love. It does some crazy stuff to drums. Woo, so that's sounding insane without it. Very crunchy and almost bit crushed to an extent. And so this is really darkening it up and making it just deep. Put an EQ going on there to shape it. Post the distortion here on these hi-hats. This tremolator is just kind of adding this feel to the hi-hats, you know. A little bit of brightness. And then jungle percussion, just cutting out a bit of that harshness. Saturating it slightly. Quite a wild move. I don't know why I would have done that, but there you go. In the moment, I guess. And then on the tambourine, a little bit of that air band, as well as just some filtering, general filtering. But then most of the sound here is coming from this drum saturation. I have two parallel drum processors. One is a parallel compressor, and this is also a parallel compressor, but I label it as a saturator because it's usually quite intense. And it's this UBK1, which is mainly just a pretty hardcore compressor. But in this case, it's going into another 1176, which has the 3 buttons pressed in, and then into a decapitator. So with it off, you can hear what it's doing to the sound. Bringing everything up in front in your face, squashing it a bit, making it just really fat. And then we've got a couple of effects. We've got a stereo slap, a chamber, 1/8 delay, and some plate going on. So this is what's going on the effect side. So some chamber on the claps, a little bit of slap delay on the claps as well. You can hear that percussion in the background. Not too much, just adding a bit of ambience. And lest we forget the processing on the bus, there's a couple of things. We've got the distressor, a culture vulture, the pull tech, and a limiter, as well as some clip. And let's hear what that's doing piece by piece. So if I turn those all off, I can go through them. And the pull tech. Limiter, just I guess adding a bit of volume, but mainly just as a safety for those peaks, as well as the clip just squashing the final peaks. Lovely. And then on the bass, we've got a couple of things going on. So, oh yeah. So we've got some EQ here, just sculpting, taking out a bit of that 60 Hertz, make room for the kick. R bass, again, just adding some 80 Hertz, just to thicken up those lower mids. And then my favorite thing is this parallel bass distortion. I've got a couple of different saturation plugins. In this case, I went for the Manny distortion and the Synths amp. And that sounds like this without it, and then adds. Really nice. And I'm also sending both of these. I've got a bass width send, which will be on this side. So bass width here. And you can hear that's really adding most of that stereo information. Just a micro shift. I'm just making the low end mono. So it's mainly hearing all of this. And then a gate is just, I guess, getting rid of any noise that's coming from that. And then processing on the bass, we've got, again, a little bit of sculpting going on here. 1176, just to keep that bass intact, because it's quite wild. Filter Freak, that's automated, not automated, but it's using the modulation and opening and closing, creating a little bit of extra movement. Bit more low end, 100 Hertz area on the pull tech and loads of top. I've got this cranked to the top, so let's see what that sounds like without it. Yeah, not a huge difference because we're mainly dealing with bass, but I guess just adding a little bit more presence to that. And then EQ, again, doing this thing where you pull down a certain frequency, in this case that, and then just boosting around it. Lastly, this multi-band, again, just to keep the whole spectrum of the bass intact. So that's without anything. And then that's what we're left with, together with the drums. Sweet, so moving on to the synths. Again, not too much, a little bit of saturation and some mid-side EQ usually is what I use the curve bender for. I really enjoy doing this just to add a bit of width in, I guess a different sense. So without these on the bus. Not too much going on there. I try to keep that bus processing quite subtle, but then it works in stages where like every plugin is doing a little bit of lifting. And in this case, yeah, not too much going on. You can see it's 1 dB notches at a time, so very subtle stuff. Adding a little bit of an effect to that first sample. Just a bit of warbly goodness. And then some EQ, I guess this is mainly sculpting room for the vocals, taking out a bit of 1.2K and 500 just to make some space. Same here. In this case, I'm pulling it out in just the mids during this verse. And then in the last section during Rush's verse. That sample is dealt with slightly differently. It's obviously a bit saturated to give it a bit more excitement during that section, as well as there's just some different carving going on to make room for Rush's vocal. Looking at the synths we've got here, so that brass, the lead synth, the serum patch, and the monk singing. The lead synth is just kind of panned side to side to get it out of the center, adding a bit of distortion to just make it more in your face, more angry. A little bit of sculpting with the EQ. Some filtering on that serum patch and a bit of compression just to add a little bit more control. Saturating the monks. Filtering it off quite a bit. And then those brass, mainly crunching it up. Bit of compression to keep it controlled. A lot of EQ going on here. As you can see, it's quite like a wide frequency spectrum going on, so I probably just toned that back just to make a lot more room for the vocals. And then last but not least, the vocals. So looking at them here, we've got JC.B and Rush. Rush had his vocals pre-engineered and mixed a bit, so when I received them, they were already sounding pretty solid. I'm mainly doing just a bit of cleanup to fit his vocal into the track, but otherwise it's just a bit of de-essing in 2 different spots, as you can see here. Using this to do some very subtle cutting and boosting of the mids, as well as a slight bit of compression. Usually I do just barely touching this first light, so let's take a look.
Out of reach, yeah, I gotta be. I'm in the Fendi trench in the Rari V, yeah, I gotta speed.
Nice, and we're following that up with a bit of soothe just to get rid of any resonances that are poking out there, and as well just some minor EQ at the very end. But let's see what that sounds like without. I can probably remove this. I was trying something out, but I didn't end up keeping it, so that can go. And this trim would be just a final level gain. So let's listen to what it sounds like without.
Out of reach, yeah, I gotta be. I'm in the Fendi trench in the Rari V, yeah, I gotta speed. We smoking this a lot of weed. I'm the Fendi Dawn, honestly.
It sounds quite nice without the context of the song, but if I play the track in there.
Out of reach, yeah, I gotta be. I'm in the Fendi trench in the Rari V, yeah, I gotta speed. We smoking this a lot of weed. I'm the Fendi Dawn, honestly.
So mainly just pulling back a bit of those harsh consonants, tucking it into the song a bit. But on top of that, we've also got this parallel compression here to, again, just really get it to be the main element in the song and stand out there.
Out of reach, yeah, I gotta be.
Super compressed. This is usually all buttons in. Yeah, all buttons, quite a fast release and medium attack. Some de-essing on top of that.
I get a lot of green. It's no love, you are not the team.
And then JC.B has a slightly different approach. So obviously I would have removed his processing from the production and would have done a similar thing here. So EQ, not too much going on, just a little bit of boosting and cutting. Usually quite a bit of compression goes on, but again, small compression in a lot of stages. So in this case, we've got this 1176.
It's on me, inside myself like some old Russian doors. That's on me, rush open doors, no more playing for chips, I'm more palm free.
Can you hear that quarter note delay I've got going underneath him? Just a mono like center quarter note. So that's followed by a pull tech to add some lows and highs.
It's on me, inside myself like some old Russian doors. That's on me, rush.
A little bit more compression from the RVox and the SSL. And this is, again, just adding a little bit of mids, cutting out a bit of those sharp high ends. In this case, well, not super high in the 1.3K area. Bit of filtering, and sounds like this.
It's on me, inside myself like some old Russian doors. That's on me, rush open doors, no more playing for chips, I'm more palm free.
And then again, two areas of de-essing, very subtly usually, to just pull out different kind of parts of those S's that I'm feeling are sticking out a bit too much. And as well, some soothe, just to, again, pull out any harsh resonances that are in the vocal.
It's on me, inside myself like some old Russian doors. That's on me, rush open doors, no more playing for chips, I'm more palm free. Yeah. Built different, too cold.
Last but not least, the backing vocals. Again, shaping, cutting out a bit of those lows to not get in the way of the lead vocal. A little bit of compression. I use this always on BVs, just in mono, so the left and right are compressed individually, and in that way, it just keeps everything a bit more fair, because there's always like bits on the left, bits on the right that kind of poke out, or there's different ad-libs that go on. So like this, it just keeps it all even, using the Valhalla delay on the quarter note just to add a little bit of sauce, I guess. And then all of this is also being sent to a backing vocals reverb, which is, I believe, again, just another Valhalla. Boom. So got that Valhalla reverb, nice shortish reverb, filtered quite a lot.
It's on me, inside myself. That's on me.
And here there's a bit of harshness on the S's going on, so I'm just using soothe and a de-esser just to help attack those.
It's on me, inside myself. That's on me.
And then, all together, you've got this.
It's on me, inside myself like some old Russian doors. That's on me, rush open doors, no more playing for chips, I'm more palm free. Yeah, built different, too cold. The modular two-tone, in the basement with art dealers, I need 2 phones.
Basically the production. I got a little couple of delay throws. There's one as JC.B's vocal ends into Rush's vocal, and then there's a couple during Rush's vocal where you can hear these.
Gotta leave. Ace of spade bottles.
Nothing crazy, just again to add a little bit of excitement to accenting some certain parts of his vocal.
It's time to eat. Ace of...
Nothing crazy, but you can hear that bouncing around. And it just, again, just a little bit of excitement This wasn't a super heavy production, and I really enjoyed working on this one. Very excited for another production we've got, but you'll hear about that later in time. For the time being, I would recommend you go check out, again, Flying V featuring the one and only JC.B and Rush, and let us know what you think in the comment section. I'd really appreciate that. And once again, I've been Chris Vella, and I'll see you on the next one.